As you might be able to tell, I am not a 90 Mills. I am holding on for her while she makes her way over to our live stream today. And when she gets here, I will hand over to her much more capable hands. So my name is Omar Mohammed. I am the CEO of the Cropper Foundation, the partner organization on the Climate Gen Z conference, and I'm happy to kick off today's very interactive discussion on how you can innovate your activism for climate action and for wider sustainability, of course. Joining me today, we have Liam, Dizan, and Axel, three very active advocates and activists across, a diversity of different experiences and topics that all sort of combine and integrate into climate action. You know what they say, every job today is a climate job. Every bit of advocacy and activism is really climate activism and advocacy. So what I'm going to do is to have folks just do a quick intro of themselves, what their background is in terms of activism, again, for climate, but of course, their broader relationship with activism. And then after that, we'll get into a couple of questions, and then we'll hear from you all as attendees. We'll get some questions from you all in the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom. So I'm going to start with Liam, since he's to my top left, then Dizan, and then Axel.
Yeah, thanks so much, Omar. Thanks so much, Masao and the Cropper team and the CSER team for inviting me. Really honored to be part of this discussion, and welcome to everyone that has joined. So hopefully you can tell from my accent, but I'm actually from Trinidad. I'm based in London in the UK. So just to kind of give you a little bit about how I got here, where I am, and then I'll pass on to Dizan. I went to school in Trinidad, did my sort of CAPE, and then I kind of realized that university wasn't really for me, and so I decided I just wanted to go straight into working, and so I got myself a job as a front desk agent at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Trinidad, and then I started working there, and then an opportunity to move to the UK about 13 years ago came about, and I moved with Hyatt to the UK. And it's interesting, Omar mentioned the fact that, everyone is pretty much a climate activist, especially in the sort of current crisis that we face, but I wouldn't necessarily consider myself a climate activist in this sort of general sense. I'm openly gay. And when I moved to the UK, I really recognized the power of being my true authentic self and what that meant. And it was through then I realized that in being my authentic self, my relationships got stronger. I performed better. My mental health was happier, improved. And so, I was working at this company where I realized that, I was able to thrive not in spite of who I am, but because of who I am. And so that led me to get involved in LGBT advocacy, predominantly here in the UK. And, working for Hyatt also allowed me to explore that. And, I started the LGBT network here in the UK for Hyatt Hotels, and then really started doing various type of advocacy work, and that kind of led into work outside of business. And about 2 years ago, I got this opportunity to join Ernst & Young. Some of you may know EY, a global professional services firm. And I moved into the diversity, equity, and inclusion team. And it's interesting. People always used to tell me that I have a day job and a gay job. And my day job, I was, developing the marketing strategies for this global organization of 400,000 people. But then, outside of that, I was, thinking about my time back at Trinidad and how important that was for me to advocate for the inclusion of LGBT plus people and the equality of LGBT plus people. And at that intersection, recognize the power of business and the role that businesses have and organizations and corporations have in the crises that we face in the world today. And so that's a sort of intersection that I sit at. I sit at the intersection of LGBT advocacy and business advocacy, and recognizing the impact that that businesses can have to fight the different issues that we face today. And I'm sure I'll have an opportunity to talk more about that, but I'll pause there for now and maybe hand back to Anaiti, who just was able to join us.
Hi, can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Thumbs up. All right, great. Thank you so much for that introduction, a very interesting introduction, Liam. I am joining a little bit late because, technology, sometimes it's on your side and sometimes it's just playing tricks on you. I've been testing my connection since yesterday, and today that I needed it gave me a couple of issues, but nevertheless, I'm very happy to be here with you all. Thank you for those of you who have connected on this Saturday afternoon. I know it's not an easy commitment to do, but nevertheless, we're here, we're together. So just to bring me up to date, have you all completed your introductions, or is there anybody else?
Just my introduction tonight. I think next we're going to move on to Dizan.
Okay, so I guess I'll go straight into it. Hi, my name is Dizan Billy. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. First of all, I want to really thank the team for considering me to be, a speaker for this event. I think events like this, actually this is the first of its kind, right? Being strategically targeting Gen Z activists and the younger people who really want to get involved in climate and environmental activism. I think it's a really amazing initiative. So I'm really honored to be a part of it. I am, how do I say it? I'm a writer at heart. I've always been involved in writing and communications and in the environment. Like, that's just who I am. I feel as though I don't know myself outside of it almost. I've been in the environmental field since I was like 14 or so, when I was way back when I was in like Form 2 or Form 3 in St. Joseph's Convent, St. Joseph in Trinidad, where my friend and I, we started the first environmental club in SJC. And since then, it's just like snowballed, and I've just been involved in a lot of different fields with regards to the environmental work. Then when after school and into university, I got involved with the Caribbean Youth Environment Network. And, I really actually started my communications and PR and marketing through CYN, being the PR officer for CYN in Trinidad and Tobago. And then eventually I became the president of CYN in Trinidad and Tobago. And it really helped. I always say that CYN was sort of like a very core foundational element of my environmental work, because being in CYN, I got the chance to, really hone my skills in communications and marketing as it specifically with regards to the environmental and climate field, and from there, I went on to really getting into digital marketing, where I was the creative director at a digital marketing company in Trinidad and Tobago for a couple of years. And then eventually, moving into the climate tracker work that I do right now, where with regards to climate tracker, basically, I can probably give a little rundown into climate tracker. We're basically an international nonprofit organization, and we aim to support and train and incentivize better climate journalism globally. So within the climate tracker space.
Susan, you just went on to mute accidentally.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, so basically we work in 4 different regions. We work in Latin America, the Caribbean, Africa, and Asia, and we really believe in the power of journalism. But more importantly, we recognize that many young journalists don't have the training, the resources, or the support that they need to identify the climate stories that they want to tell. And that's why a climate tracker in the Caribbean, I'll say climate tracker Caribbean, because that's what I lead right now. We really are focusing on climate justice, and just helping journalists understand climate justice and the different ways that it spans into, it's such a pervasive issue, and how it spans into different parts of the economy and different sectors and so on, and finding the stories that need to be told from a Caribbean perspective. So I am honored to be able to work with a couple other team members from Belize and Suriname and Grenada, and together we just, focus on really amplifying climate justice stories for the region. And that is what we do. That's what I do. And I think I'll pass it over to Axel.
Thank you, and thank you so much for the invite. I'm Axel. I'm from Mexico, and something that really interesting about me is that I grew up in an old city in the southwest of Mexico. In my city, we have one of the biggest refineries in Latin America. So just like taking a look out of my window, we can see big flames with 25 meters of gas flames, burning oil all the day from the last 70 years. So that's like my first inspiration to work on climate, because all my family is dedicated to the oil business since I get memory. So I'm like the green sheep of my family, like talking around renewable energy, talking about being sustainable, to take care more about resources, because I grew up in a polluted city and a polluted environment, and not only around the environment, I'm talking around through the health of the people inside my city, because all the day we are smelling and smoking all the gases from the refinery. So it's very difficult to confront this, being like a climate activist in my city, because normally the people that is living here, they don't know about the risk. They don't know about the real issues that came from the oil industry. And of course, they protect their own business, because the people in my city works inside the refinery. So it's very difficult to talk with them when you have to, work in different ways in which they are like looking for when each day I earn money about all business. So it's very difficult to talk about that. So well, I start on that, and I'm energy engineering. I moved to another city to study this engineering and really get a focus on renewable energy. I joined Student Energy like 10 years ago. Student Energy is an NGO, global NGO, that is working with the energy transition around the world. In that organization, I start a lot of voluntary systems, a lot of events, educational programs around how to transit to a new system of energy, and how young students or young people can like jump into this agenda and create different type of impacts, from the educational impacts, from the social environment impacts, and of course the social media too, that is very important right now to communicate. So working on these type of projects, I really get like focus on how to explore more about the region. So I start with UNICEF and IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency. The last year, we launched the first sustainable energy guide for young people around the world, in which you can learn how to jump into this agenda and how to know more about the first steps of this agenda and how to communicate on them. So this is part of my work. Right now, I'm in the Sustainable Energy for All Youth Energy Program. That is like something more around communicate. So I'm creating videos. This is my first time working on social media. So I'm learning how to communicate better my ideas in Instagram, for example, or TikTok, because it's really important to connect with the Gen Z right now in this type of channels, no? So right now I'm preparing a new video. It's around sustainable cooling. And so if you have the opportunity to follow me on Instagram, I'm Axel SDG7. So you can check the next activities that I'm going to launch. So thanks.
Great. All right. So, and please feel free, our participants and panelists, you can, drop your, social media handles and stuff in the chat as well, so people can follow you, Axel SDG7. So we can get straight into the conversation, because all of you all kind of come to activism from different perspectives. Liam sort of blossomed when he moved to the UK and really sort of saw what maybe was possible in a space where, coming out of a space where he didn't really see that possibility. Dizan said, well, I mean, that's kind of all she knows from her sort of, growing up academic days. And Axel, of course, looked out his window and saw issues every single day from since he was. So basically, I think, we want to, yeah, okay, great. Yeah, so to you all, who or what is an activist? And from that, what have been for you all some of the more successful tools and approaches that you all have taken in your activism? So we can start with Dizan, and then you hand it off to to one of our other panelists afterwards.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Omar. So for me, I think an activist is someone who wants to see change, right? I think an activist is someone who sort of stands against the status quo, and stands for those people and groups and communities in society who are vulnerable. I think an activist is someone who is brave and is really really passionate about making a change in what they see is wrong or unjust in society, right? So I think that an activist can be anyone, but at the core of it, you really need to be somebody who is passionate about making a change, whether it's social change, whether it's political change, but you really have to have that you really want to see that shift in society. So if you're a climate activist, for instance, you might, want to see a shift towards renewable energy. You might want to see a shift towards sustainable development and those sorts of things. There's so many different things that you can mention in the environmental and climate world. But at the core of it, I think activism is something that you feel within you. You really feel passionate about it, and you do anything to really see that change happen. But at the same time, it's something that you can't do alone. Yes, it's true that you can't solve a climate crisis alone, but it's also true that, the climate crisis can't be solved without you. It is a team effort. So I feel as though someone who considers themselves an activist is someone who's passionate, wants to see change, and is excited to work on these things with other people who have that like-minded approach to society and to seeing a livable future for everybody. So in my mind, that's what it is. And I think that, it's something, I feel as though Gen Z, speaking directly to Gen Z, I feel as though it's something that can come very naturally for Gen Z, because the way that, and it's something that I remember speaking about recently with a friend of mine. They were saying that Gen Z, people, everybody has their pros and their cons about each of the different generations, and something that a lot of people say is that, or that she was saying is that, Gen Z, they don't know how to socialize, and they don't know how to speak with each other. And, my response was like, no, it's not that they don't know how to socialize. It's just that they socialize differently, so I think it's about understanding how, understanding your audience, and I could get into all of that maybe later on. But I think at the heart of it, I feel as though Gen Z naturally has that spirit of activism, and that's that we're born into this fabric in society where they see that things are wrong, and they're very brave about dealing with it. So I feel as though this sort of event is just really, really, it's sort of hit the nail on the head for me, I don't know, I can go on and on. So I'll pass it back to, I think, maybe Axel. What do you think is a climate activist or activist, Axel?
Okay, well, I think whoever who wants to, have the idea of the passion and belief to change something is something I'm really accord with you. For example, the sense of injustice is something very important in this type of activism, in climate activism, because climate is very injustice with the people. For example, here in Guadalajara, where is the city I'm living right now, yesterday 2 people died inside a car because the floods. So it's very injustice, this type of situations for people, citizens, because they don't know about what is happening around. And activism is a way to share this information, is a way to share the personal experience of something. For example, in my case, I share the personal experience of me of living or grow up in an old city. That's really important, and is the first like connection with me with activism. So if you want to be an activist, or you have the idea of that, connect with your personal experience first, and have the social responsibility to have a strong sense of social and believe that the duty as citizens have to engage more with actions. For example, activists connect with actions, not only ideas or not only propose, of course. An activist grow up when the purpose connect with more actions, and with this type of actions you can impact more people around the world. And of course, inside you have to have this desire of change and the advocacy to influence to everyone, and the idea to connect with a community, to be solidarity, and of course the civil engagement. One of the my favorite type of activism I want to practice is connect with people in parks, for example, with my neighbors, with my for example, in my hood, with the people that is living around me, because this is my third channel to connect and to do something. And then I really want to do activism around social media, for example, the other people that is seeing that the action that I'm doing. Of course, right now, Gen Z is more connected with technology. One of the type of tools that I'm right now using is technology. For example, 2 years ago, I developed an app is an education app for climate issues. So people from different parts of the world can get into this application and know more about that. So this is another type of way to get impact and something special. And for example, right now, an activism around veganism, around sustainable energy. And I want to start with floods because it's something that is really impactful right now, and nobody's saying nothing, and nobody's spreading the voice that what you have to do, what is the real problem around that. So I think it's all around the promote of your vision, the promote of your cultural change, and the political ways to implement this type of actions. So I pass to Liam. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Titian. After, it's interesting when Omar talks about, what is an activist, or, what is activism. I recently read this book, that talks about the fact that we're living in this time of multiple crises. We have the biodiversity crisis, we have the waste crisis, we have the water crisis, food crisis, health crisis, inequality crisis, and obviously most important, the climate crisis. We have the exclusion crisis, systemic exclusion of people based on their race, their ethnicity, but their sexual orientation. And so, with all of these critical issues facing the world, I think back to the time when I was, a Gen Z, obviously not a Gen Z, but at the age of Gen Z, and I had this real sort of traditional idea of what an activist looked like. It evoked the Greta Thunbergs and the Martin Luther Kings of the world. And if you're from Trinidad, it would evoke the Chocolate Allen and the Wayne Kublal thing of the region. When in reality, Dizan spoke about it, and the work that she does in journalism. Axel spoke about it, about his community being impacted. The reality is that, activists can look like filmmakers, they can look like doctors, they can look like corporations, brands, businesses, a fishing village, journalists, students, artists. And so I think ultimately we need to think about what issues are most important to us, what are we most passionate about, and then what can we do within our corner, within our circle of influence, to advocate or champion for political or social change. When I think back to, when I was, I think it was 13 or 14, I was down in south of Trinidad protesting the construction of an Alcoa smelter plant. I had no clue what that actually meant, but I just knew that there was an impact on this community. And I think that, what we did then, a couple of friends and I, we went down to this community, and it was about sort of giving a platform to their voices. So we created this film, we partnered with like a local TV station, and we were able to air this film that through the voices of the people that were being impacted by the construction of the smelter plant. It didn't happen in the end. The plant wasn't built. I don't take responsibility for that. I think obviously there's so many other, but I think it does make an impact. And I think when people, there's this saying that, if you don't believe in the influence of one person or, the power of one person, try spending the night in a room with one mosquito. And I think it's, it's all of those different ways in which activism can manifest itself. I think when I was 15 and, Movado, who is this dancehall artist from Jamaica, who had the most misogynistic and violent music, and I was protesting about him coming to Trinidad for a concert, and it was about writing to the NGOs that work in gender-based violence to draw attention. And I think sometimes activism can simply be drawing attention to a situation. It might be something as big as fasting or protesting or boycotting, but it can be as small as writing a letter or calling into your radio station. So I think really shifting this perception of what an activist is to more of, I think, interestingly, again, similar to the book that I'm reading, is around sort of like shifting to an activist mindset. And so everything that you do, you approach it with an activist mindset. And so I think that that takes away from the sort of like the tree hugger activist, just stop oil protester, which I think is all valid and all needed at this moment. And I think it reflects the urgency of the situation. But I also don't think that people should allow that perception of activism to isolate the types of activism that they can do.
Oh, thank you, Liam. And I hope you can hear me well. I first of all, again, thank you so much for letting me join you guys in this conversation. My name is Anaite Mills, for those of you who are online. I'm a climate change expert, been consulting in the climate change adaptation and mitigation space for some years now. And I'm based in Kingston, Jamaica. I particularly love this topic, and I think we can wrap up the first question around who is an activist. And I think from what I get from Disan, from Liam and Axel, and myself as well, is that anybody can be an activist. No, there's no particular concept or set of criteria that you have to check, or a box that you have to check to call yourself an activist. An activist is the person that has an idea, that has a passion, that has an action, that has skills, that has knowledge, and that has the intention to make this world a different world from whatever you are sitting. It doesn't matter what the topic is. It could be climate, it could be, gender, it could be women rights, animal rights, it could be, pedestrian rights, whatever you feel that needs to be tackled makes you an activist, makes you somebody that is moved by action. So I think the first set of this discussion, and even though I've been dropping in and out, I think I have dropped in a very, very, very nice times, because I have heard, the kind of ideas I think it's important to share with all the participants today. If there's an injustice, if there is something that you're interested about, if you want to connect for personal experience, you feel a sense of duty, you have the passion and the energy to say something, you are an activist. And anybody can be an activist. And it's a particularly important time in the world to be action, and to be action oriented and get involved in something that you feel, about. Something that is very important is that, I think we were discussing a while ago, that there's this idea that activists are persons that have to put together signs and go out and protest and skip work and skip school and just, dedicate time and mobilize people. And sometimes you don't want to do that. Activists can take so many different forms. So for the next question, I would like to invite you guys to tell us a little bit, us, and from your own personal experience, and to the participants, what kind of activism do you practice? What kind of, action you have taken, and, try to keep it short, just to say, what has been the experience and how you have practiced your activism, just as you practice yoga, football, or video games, or whatever it is that you do. What kind of practice do you do, and how you do it? And then we're going to invite the rest of the participants to give us ideas and give us stories on how they may want to practice activism without knowing so. You may be already practicing activism, but you have these traditional ideas. Activism can be anything. So anybody of you that want to perhaps jump ahead and tell us what sort of activism do you practice? Dizan, I see you.
I can probably go. So first of all, I want to say I love that you mentioned that, an activist can be anyone. Literally, it can be anyone. So long as you have that passion within you, that burning fire, I think is really important. Because if not, you get burnt out, and that's probably a whole different discussion. But also, to answer your question directly, I have been in that field of, like, the protests and out on the streets and all that. And it's really important. That is really important. But the core of my activism has really been through climate communications. Now, on the surface, climate change communication, it's about educating, informing, warning, persuading, mobilizing, and really solving the critical issue that is climate change. But I think what we need to realize is that climate change communications is really at the core of the entire movement. Without having a really clear strategy of how you're going to communicate your message, it can all end up all over the place. And I see that Liam is shaking his head. I'm sure he understands that having that strategy for your communication, you're communicating a climate issue and environmental issue is very important. So that's how I have been involved as an activist, in terms of journalism, and really building the capacity of journalists and communicators around the region, around the world, to understand different elements of the climate movement and how to communicate it in a way that people can not just understand, but feel empowered and feeling, enlightened to do something about it within their space, to their ability, of course. And I think that within the climate change arena as well, just understanding that the transmission model for communicating has changed so much. No longer is it just a one-way situation where you go in front of a screen, or like everybody sits down to look at TV like at 7 o'clock and watches the news, and there's no feedback, right? The transmission model now is so different. There are a lot of different platforms that you can use for your communicating of climate change. There are a variety of messages, how to craft these messages, how to transmit these messages, understanding your audience and understanding the different platforms that your audience might be on and how to really reach them. And it is just a wide array of different ways that you can use climate communications as an activism tool. So I think that my passion personally and my experience has been in understanding those tools and getting, or not just getting, but trying to inspire other people within the Caribbean to really understand those tools in order to tell the stories that need to be told. Because as I keep saying over, I feel myself just repeating this over and over, but as I keep saying, the narrative, the climate narrative out there is just way too global north, you guys. Like, it's just way too focused on things that's important to the global north, when the messages and people actually understanding on the ground what is happening in the global south, there's little to no stories. And that's why it's so important to really empower people within the Caribbean, within the small island developing state, to be able to tell their stories so that people could know what is actually happening on the ground. And I'll pass it back to Anaiti, I think, on
No,
that.
you're absolutely right. I've been working in climate change for about 12, almost 15 years. And something that I always repeat all over the place is that climate action is in urgent need for communicators, urgent. And communicators in ways that, people that can just break it down into bits of pieces that people can relate to and understand and can say and relate, like associate it with their day-to-day. And
I think Anaiti might have frozen. Is it just for me or?
Yeah, Liam, I think you should just take the question.
Yeah, sure. Around my type of activism, I think, it's interesting, Dizan, as you spoke about the importance of communication and, and where the sort of, climate communications sits at the moment. And I think I would sort of build on that to say that it's really about understanding the language of who you're trying to influence. And so for me, I sit within this, within the business. I work for a global organization that has a huge impact, as I said, is, over 400,000 people around the world, has a huge influence. If you think about the people within that organization. And so by that, the organizations have power. And so, I work with an organization called Open for Business. And what we do is we build the business and economic case for LGBT plus inclusion around the world. And so I think it's about understanding the language of the person you're trying to influence. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to influence business leaders and we're trying to influence policymakers. And so, plug for Caesar, for example, is the importance of research. And so, a researcher is very much an activist, and we think about, we've recently completed a report that was able to show that LGBT plus discrimination in the Caribbean, so the English-speaking Caribbean, is costing the economy $4.25 billion a year. That's how much it's costing us to have discriminatory laws on the books, the health inequities, the performance that of people in work. And by putting forward that case, you're changing the argument. And so what we found in places like the Caribbean, in places like East Africa, Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, as it relates to human rights, the human rights argument is not working. There are people across, in the world that do not see LGBT plus people as human, sadly. And so I think, how do you change your activism? How do you change your approach to activism to speak the language? And I'm not saying that, the people that are, working on LGBT plus organizations and doing the very, very difficult work on the ground is very much needed. But how do you have a discussion with business leaders, with policymakers? And so you can go to businesses across the Caribbean and say, listen, this is how much it's costing you. Like, at the end of the day, do you want to be profitable? Do you want to drive long-term value? Do you want to drive financial value? Do you want to drive societal value? If you're going to drive value and long-term value, you're going to have to make change, or you're going to have to advocate change within these organizations. And the same thing for policymakers. If you want to increase your competitiveness as on the global stage, again, the research was showing that the issue of LGBT inequality and the lack of LGBT rights in the Caribbean is not only important to LGBT plus people. We found that non-LGBT plus people that are traveling to the Caribbean will make a decision about whether they go to that country or not based on whether they have LGBT plus inclusive laws on their books. So this is not something that's impacting just LGBT plus people. So I think it's really about, just building on that point, is that it's about how do you change the language to, it's marketing 101, it's communications 101, understanding your audience. And I think that, for me, that's how I try to, make a difference. There's, employee activism. We're seeing big businesses, big brands where they're getting pushback from their employees, where as an employee of this company, I am not going to allow you to continue to pump this much waste into, into the world. And so we're seeing shareholder activism. The shareholders in businesses are actually, saying, well, no, I'm not going to invest in this if what is the long-term value? So I think that there are various different, strands of activism and ways in which you can you can innovate your activism by really understanding who you're trying to influence and what change you're trying to make. And so maybe I'll pass it on to Axel.
Thank you. So interesting, Liam. I really accord with you on that. The audience is really important to connect with the purpose that you want to communicate when you are an activist. Right now, for example, I focus my practice around sustainable energy education. It's like my first purpose inside me, because connect with my personal experience that I say later. So I think sustainable energy education right now is passing something very important, because energy is one of the most polluted industries around the world. I think 80% of the gas emissions of all the world comes from the energy industry. So to talk around this type of issues and communicate better the ways to educate people around is really important right now to practice an activism around sustainable energy. For example, working on that right now, I'm doing some practices too around the food system related to energy too, because 60% of all the food that is processed and constrained for all the people around the world is really get impacted all the polluted systems around energy. So veganism is one of the things that are in practice right now. I want to share this with people that is really near to me and close to me, that they have to change in a little bit their diets, because it's consuming a lot of energy and pollute a lot. So if we can, adapt into this type of diets, it's very important too. And the other one is like the sustainable mobility. I practice biking, so every day I'm moving in my bike. If I have to do something in the downtown, I move on my bike. Of course, sometimes I can move in my bike to everywhere, but I'm trying to do it, and I'm trying to generate communities. For example, every Wednesday, like 400 people in my city go on the streets and go bike, and try to communicate why using a sustainable mobility is better for everyone, inclusive to save time during the day, or get more healthy too, because exercise and sustainability is really connected, and the well-being that you can generate around those is very connected with your diet, with your exercise of every day, and you communicate what you want to learn, So this type of activities is really important. Right now I'm working too with research, dissemination of information, and writing, because writing right now is giving me the opportunity to spread more my voice and invite more people to spread the voice inside the blogs, inside the different strategies to communicate better. Last week I started a movement here in my city around climate tales. For example, I give the information to writers that can connect right now with climate issues. They don't know about climate, they don't know about the environment, but they really know to write better. So I give the information, I prepare them, I give some capacitation about what is the consequence of climate change, what is the causes of climate change, what is ideas of you want to do, of the actions that you can implement on that. And then they inspire of this information and create tales about that. So this is really good, because it's really, it's something I really enjoy. because I get really happy and I really want to write and listen the histories of everyone. But it's really important too, because this type of tales um, um, have the power to inclusive like impact like the decision makers in my city, because when you connect with art, you can connect with the human part of everyone. So this type of like a theater or cinema, like focus everything, this type of essential art of the life can give us another opportunity to like impact with our activism.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Leo.
I was just gonna ask after, there was a question that came in the Q&A from Jean-Pierre around, the sharing with rural families, how to adapt to climate change. Would you consider that a form of activism? And so I just wondered, with your work in the community, just to get your kind of thoughts on that. You're on mute, Axel.
Okay. Well, with the rural families, I think is something related to ecotechnicisms. For example, the way in which you are like capturing your water, for example, the work in the in the rural parts of Mexico, for example, they have like water problems. So a lot of people is trying to cap all the water first. And for example, trying to cook with renewable energy sources. For example, here in Mexico, people are like using solar energy to cook in rural zones. It's something very good because health is better in a way, because normal people likes burning wood or another type of biofuels, but polluted biofuels. And another way to do it is through your through the way are you like feeding your I don't know if you have like animal from farms like cows or everything. And for example, how can you like feed the cows with a sustainable diet, for example, a low carbon diet, because the methane on everything is like down when you can feed your cows with that. So I think like you can do this type of actions too. Sometimes some ones are like hard to implement and some ones are easy to implement, but in a way it's something that you can do there. And
and I think so, because the question, I think all those are great examples of ways in which you can help teach or help educate or empower communities. And so I guess to answer Jo's question based on Axel's great examples is that yes, I think teaching rural families how to adapt to climate change, we've probably reached a point where it's sort of like survival. We're teaching people survival to adapt to, and so would certainly be a form of activism. But Dizane, sorry, I cut you just at the beginning.
I think that I'm okay with you too, because right now in the farms is the most, I don't know, I think you have more possibilities to adapt, because inside cities is very difficult, because you don't have like the space to put your sustainable cook, for example, or the space for grow your own food or your own animal farm. So in cities, you can do it, but it's most difficult to adapt. And I think we have to go back sometimes into these customs from rural, because they have like this ancestral like knowledge about how to preserve the environment, or how to take care of the resources too. So this is a really good connection in this type of adaptation plans or adaptation actions that you can do it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Axel, for sharing those examples. And I think just to wrap up, because we're getting, I think we're just over the time. Just to wrap up, I think what we can do is just go around. Maybe the three of us kind of tie back into the topic of innovative activism, right? So from the work that we all three have sort of been doing for our career, maybe we can just point out just one, really briefly, one tip that you might have for an aspiring Gen Z activist, who wants to use their activism in an innovative way. Liam, how would you say, okay, this is my top tip for creative or innovative climate activism? And Axel, you can answer, and then I'll just wrap up with my answer at the end.
Great. Perfect.
Sure, thanks, Dizan. And I'll keep it quite brief. Because I'm there thousands and thousands with the increase in technology, and there's so many different innovative ways in which we can really sort of transform our activism. But I would go right back to the basics, and it's down to collaboration, partnership, finding your tribe, finding people that can support you. This is very this is draining work. It's a lot of the times it goes very much unappreciated by many different people, and so I think really finding the people that you can work with, collaborating, and in that same vein, respecting other people's form of activism, even though you may not agree with it, even though you may not feel it's the best route to the solution. I think we need to be better at respecting the forms of activism that we take, and appreciating that we're not always going to agree.
Nice. Well, I think, for example, something really interested to innovate inside activism is maybe the idea of the incentivation, or how you incentivize people to get into an action or into a movement. For example, people are sometimes are waiting for, I want to do something, but what you can give me through back. So sometimes this type of issues are really complex, because when you work with activism, of course, sometimes you can pay for the actions, or you can pay for the volunteering from people, or the time from people, because it's something that is like raising from your heart, and this type of ideas. But incentivate is really good, because maybe you don't have to pay with money, but you have pay with, I don't know, like information. You have maybe tools, for example, or free I don't know, like knowledge in which they can approach to generate more, for example. And another way that I was innovating activism, like 2 years ago, I create VR, a virtual reality educational program, in which with virtual reality you can go inside a solar park, for example, and so everything that is connected to work on the solar park inside. So for example, that's connected with people who hasn't have the opportunity to go to a solar park, or get involved with something very technical like this, and it's create a better dissemination of the information, and people can feel another experience of knowledge, because of course this passed during the pandemic. So my ideas during pandemic was very crazy, and I decided to create virtual reality worlds to educate more people. But works a little bit, but normalize this type of information get some time too. For example, right now Metaverse is doing this type of steps, but of course thinking into basics is really important too, because you have the opportunities there, you have all the titles there.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Axel and Liam. And I think just to wrap up, I think my top advice would be to really not restrict yourself. to maybe what you've studied. So for instance, if I were to just say, okay, I rep for the social sciences, so I'm not going to get involved in environmental science. I'm not going to get involved in climate change. Like that would not make sense. You know, we all need to understand that and I'm going back to the Gen Z, like, you know, you're in school right now, you're studying and you're saying, okay, but I'm studying history. How is this gonna like impact climate change? You know, it's all about all of us just coming together and really realizing that all of us have a part to play and not restricting your own expectations, your potential and your worldview. You know, reaching outside of the Caribbean, reaching outside of your country is very important. Without doing that, you're just gonna be stuck in a bubble, you know? So I think my top advice would really be to just don't restrict yourself, you know? So on that note, I think we have a couple different points that we can share. And I think I'm gonna say thank you to Axel and Liam for joining us. And I guess I'll thank myself as well. Unfortunately, Anaiti had to leave due to technical problems, but thank you everyone for joining us. And I hope that you've learned a lot during this session. And we have a sip and paint, I think, coming up soon, or like a sip session of some sort. So grab your sips, alcoholic or non-alcoholic, and join us on that session. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Suzanne.